I'm Dawn Montefusco, and this is Write from Your Heart, how to unleash your creativity, share your message, and leave a lasting legacy. And today I have a dear friend and amazing writer, Sage Cohen. Sage is the author of the nonfiction books Fierce on the Page, The Productive Writer, and Writing the Life Poetic, all from Writer's Digest books, and the poetry collection Like the Heart, the World, from Queen of Wands Press. Her award-winning poetry, essays, and fiction have been published widely. Since founding Sage Cohen Global in 1997, Sage has been developing communication, education, and empowerment solutions that help individuals and businesses, including American Express, McKesson, and Xerox, change the conversation. Sage is a graduate of Brown University and the Creative Writing Program at New York University, where she was awarded a full fellowship. She offers information and inspiration for writers at sagecohen.com. Hi, Sage.
Hi, it's so great to be with you.
So great to see you. You know, I went to NYU, but I did not get a full fellowship. That's amazing. I chugged. It was the city. I was young.
Yes, those are the good years to be.
Oh, it was fun. So tell us what you're up to these days and what projects you're working on and all the good stuff.
Well, my day job of my Sage Cohen Global has me quite busy. I am building a teaching environment called Sage School on teaching.
Nice.
That's what I'm calling it now, where I'm going to be offering multiple poetry classes, productivity classes for writers, of an offering related to Fierce on the Page, kind of taking people through a process around what do I want and who am I as a writer. So that's been my big kind of creative project these days.
Nice. Sage School. That's such a great name. You grabbed that domain, I take it. You got it. Yeah, that's amazing. Congratulations. Well, let's dive in. When did you first, I'm going to ask some of the basic questions in this series because it's kind of interesting. When did you first know you were a writer?
I was strangely unconscious about the fact that I was writing. It was something, I wrote poetry every day from starting at about age 13. Mm-hmm. And at about 23, it occurred to me that that's what I was doing. Mm-hmm. So there was a decade of sort of writing as survival strategy, writing as breathing. And I was newly in San Francisco and out of college and said, gosh, I write poetry every day. I wonder if I'm a poet. And it was this kind of reorganization of identity. And I said, well, this is really important to me. I better go get some real education here because I was kind of in a bubble. I was doing it myself. I didn't have a community. I had no formal education in poetry proper. And then I applied to grad schools and went to NYU and immerse myself.
Tell us a little bit about the process before you immersed yourself, or you were just raw, right? It was coming out of you. Tell me more about writing as breathing. I'm really curious these days. I've been studying a bit of how writing and trauma how writing actually helps people heal from trauma.
Yeah.
How did you, what did you feel when you were writing? How did it help you before school?
I've come to think of it like this, that we have experience, and then writing creates a space between what happened and sort of the ultimate story we tell about it, kind of how we integrate what happened. And writing gives a space of attending to the present moment. And that process of attention, for me, slows life down enough to take in experience in a way that I can tolerate.
Yeah.
When something's happening and it feels bad or wrong, and instead we just kind of lean in and go and say, what does that look like? What does that sound like? What's the imagery around that? And sort of, it sort of neutralizes our stories, and it gives it gave me more choices. Uh,
Mm.
it made me feel like I was a co-creator in what was happening instead of life just kind of happening to me.
Yes, that's awesome. I love it. When do you have an early experience of when you realized that language had power? So when maybe later when you were like, whoa, this is actually powerful.
The first time it ever happened to me, I was in 10th grade. I was writing a paper on the once and future king. And it was kind of early in those were kind of my 10th grade were the first kind of thesis papers where I would take on a piece of literature and kind of come
Mhm.
up with a theory about it. I got to the end and the conclusion just kind of came through. Something I didn't know I believed or thought, something unexpected happened, came out of me.
Mhm.
And I saw it on the page and I thought, this is very interesting. Wow, it was alchemical almost. And it was the first time that I had that experience and kind of understood that there was something going on, that if I kind of got myself lined up energetically with whatever it is, that things could come through that I was not responsible for.
Excellent. Excellent.
This is
Yeah.
there.
Yes. Oh my God, this is juicy. So you write nonfiction and you write poetry. I'm
Mhm.
going to ask about poetry for a second.
Yeah.
How has now, and maybe even if you have any stories about clients or people you work with, how does poetry help in business, in life, in relationship? There's a lot being written about how just expressing yourself poetically, which almost gives you lots of freedom, right? It's not a paragraph. You can do whatever you want, really. But
Mhm.
how does poetry help?
It I think I just described a little bit about what it creates. It it has made me feel like more of an author or co-creator of my life.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, that we all have ways of being and ways of seeing.
Mm.
And when we take in our lives and put something back out in words, we get to know ourselves, see ourselves differently. We
Yeah.
get to hear ourselves differently. We get to, when I was in college, I had a friend who started looking at my poetry, and I was I'm a very cheerful, positive, optimistic person, and my poems were incredibly dark and depressing, and it was like all of that shadow material. That's where I went with it, was poetry. And this friend said, you wrote this? I don't recognize this person. And so I think that poetry gives us a bigger canvas of self,
Mm-hmm.
um, with without rules, really. I mean, poetry has its rules, but we get to decide how we use them.
Yeah.
um, I had a revelation when my son was an infant and he didn't sleep more than 2 hours at a time, and I was up with him in the middle of the night, and we were sitting in the rocking chair, and I had this revelation that I have a poetry practice, and all I need to do right now is pay attention to the smell of his head,
Mm.
to the incredible gift that this baby I wanted so much is in my arms.
Mm.
And yeah, I'm tired and this sucks, but I get to sort of choose where I put my attention. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what poetry has taught me.
I
you know
love that.
Bring ourselves to the moment with intention.
I love that.
Yeah,
How beautiful. That's fantastic. Um,
thank you.
it's really amazing because there's a great presence in writing poetry. Again, the poetic license. I love that that's even a term. Poetic license. I'm like, cool, And I once had someone get mad at me because in my poetry, my grammar wasn't 100% perfect, And I was like, first of all, I have a degree, an MFA in creative writing. Number one. Number two, it's a poem. Let's give me a little break here. But I love the presence, and I love that you get to, I love your language. You get to hold your son, smell his hair. You get to be in that moment. And I feel like poetry sort of gives us that permission too. We get to live. We get to write really dark, depressing, freakish poetry. And there's a way that allows us to sort of be more authentic, I think, in life and feel better. Why do you think there's so many closet poets? I find that when I talk about, at least in my world, because I'm not, I don't teach a lot of poetry yet, right? I used to be on stage a lot. People used to know me more as a spoken word poet, but in general, people know me as a writing coach. I do a lot of memoir. I help people with a lot of true stories. And then they find out that I'm a poet, and all of a sudden they start sending me, I didn't know. I don't show anybody. I never tell anybody. Why? Like, do you run into that? Do you run into people who like say, I'm a poet too?
I think that their poetry invites, I think I have two theories. One is that poetry is such a vulnerable state. It's where, I mean, the first time I read my poems to an audience, I just didn't think I would physically survive. It was like, here is my soul.
Wow.
So I think that's part of it, but I think for a lot of people also, they were told at some point in their lives that they were doing it wrong.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That a lot of people come to me with poetry trauma. You know, they think I'm not smart enough, I'm not creative enough, I'm not whatever enough, because somewhere in, their elementary school education, they were told they were doing it wrong.
Yep.
So I think that mix of vulnerability and how poorly defined poetry is for people makes it risky.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's an excellent point. Poetry trauma. I love it.
So one of my personal missions is that people feel invited to the party, that people feel like poetry is for me.
Yeah.
If I want it. If you don't want it, that's fine. But it's, but if I want it, it's there. It's available to me.
Amazing. Other parts of the world, I know, revere poetry. Poetry is very serious. It's like, if you don't write poetry, if you don't actually explore that world, you're not even a fully educated person in other countries. And we've taken it out of the schools. We've taken, the whole art thing. I don't want to talk about, don't get me going, about that part of the brain. My business coach was challenging me and saying, more entrepreneurs should sit down and write poetry. And in her mind, it was to tap into different areas. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about, like, entrepreneurs realizing that being more expressive and creative in their language, even as a personal project, could help them in other areas?
I always encourage people to do something, anything that's a beginner's mind kind of way to engage with your brain. We sit down and we expect ourselves to be expert at everything we do.
Totally.
And I feel like we've lost the pleasure of floundering around.
Yeah.
And so I think for somebody for whom poetry, they're not identified as being an amazing poet, but it's kind of a new, fresh thing, that's fabulous. If it's appealing, there are people who make paperclip sculptures, and that's great too, but to do something that's out of your wheelhouse, that's out of your realm of expertise, where there's not a lot of investment in being good. I think that has a lot of juice for people.
Yeah. Because, like the way I see it, entrepreneurs in general, all solopreneurs, they call it creativepreneurs now, but in general, it's a creative process. You're creating something amazing, usually, or trying.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question. A lot of people say, well, I should be writing something else. I should really write a book about whatever I do for a living, or I should write a memoir, or I should really, that's what I should do. And then I'll write what I want. I get that a lot. you know, I call it the So That book, right? I'm like, oh, you're writing a So That book so that you can write the other one that you want. What's up with that? You're a coach, you know, do you see that? I mean, I really do see that quite a bit. I'm like, wow.
Creative constipation.
Yeah. What writing is weird. People I don't think they do that necessarily. Maybe they do. They do that in paintings, but you know, or tactile art. But with writing, it's almost, we feel so much pressure with the art of the word of writing. How do people get out of the shoulds in writing?
I really think that's a process. I mean, we become so identified with what we think our material is, and it may be out of date, or so that's one, there are different things that happen for people. One is that we're identified with some version of ourselves that's out of date.
Gotcha.
Another is that people tell us, you are the person who does X. You know, you are the expert in this.
Yeah.
But we're really passionate about something completely different, but that has not been made visible. I think it's a vulnerability thing. It's like, if I bring, this one is safer for whatever reason, whatever the story is. And so if I'm going to bring this more true material forward, I kind of need some mile marker. I need some markers on the path first.
Yes.
And to make me feel safe, to make me feel accomplished before I go out into that wilderness of my true, you know.
Yes.
Offering.
Yes. That's so interesting. I really find it fascinating when people begin to write what they really want, when they actually write from the heart, they get out of their heads. And I just know that when you finally like become trusting of the process, right? There's a trust that you have to build up with yourself.
Yeah.
And that's probably the hardest part. But
yeah.
when you write from out of their heads and into their hearts, like as a way to like describe it, magic happens. Like I have had my clients and myself and friends and groups, it's like, you know it when you see it. You're like, that, keep going there. And it's so unique. Do you have any tips on how to get out of your head and into your heart when you're writing? No, just on the spot. I'm just putting you on the spot.
I always tell people, write 2 pages and call me in the morning.
Yeah.
2 pages of free writing. And it doesn't have to be 2 pages, it can be 10 minutes, but like some fixed practice of free writing regularly. For maybe a decade, I did 20 minutes a day, every day.
Nice.
The way of free writing basically is putting your pen down and not stopping, or typing. I prefer, physically writing, but it gets you to material that is underneath your thinking.
Wow.
It gets you to what's moving through you beyond what you decided you were going to say.
I love this.
And I think that's, for me, that's been my most valuable practice in discovering myself as a writer, discovering what was going on underneath.
You said 20 minutes. For someone who says they're really busy, they can't make a lot of time, and they don't know, or they're I gotta put 3 hours aside if I'm gonna write. What's your recipe if someone's just have written and they want to get back into it? What's like the minimum daily? Like, how does that work for you?
I don't really believe in prescribing that for people. I feel like we all have to become our best experts and decide, I know people who force themselves to their desk because they read that their literary god or goddess does that at 5 a.m, and so they've been doing it and they hate it. So I think that people really have to figure out, like, what gets me going?
Yes.
Is it being in a cafe surrounded by noise at 6 p.m.? Is it being up in the middle of the night under a down comforter? Is it, it takes some experimenting, but I guess my overall invitation to people is, if it doesn't work, just try something else. There's endless ways to make writing work. And I always try to challenge myself. I watch a lot of writers say, well, I can't do it at 6 a.m, so I can't do it. Like, well, what do you have 5 minutes at lunch? Do you have time in the grocery line? You know, what do you have? And how could you play with that? So whatever we can do to exit our own little self-defeating loops of what's not possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I really love that you said that, because I've never been able to follow a prescription. I've tried. I went so far as to buy Trident tropical gum. Elizabeth Gilbert said that she that, and I bought like 6 packs and I kept it on my desk, and I was going to chew that because that was going to help. And I hated the gum. I threw it away, you know. I love and I want everyone to hear this. I think this is great. The cafe that's loud at 6 o'clock at night, in the morning. It's kind of like a workout or meditation, right? Everybody's different. Some people prefer working out in the morning. I hate working out in the morning. I love working out at the end of the day. Some people have it the opposite, but whatever works, so long as you're doing it. That's the beauty. I'm curious, do you believe in the I have to write every day thing?
It's a tricky one to answer because of my business. I write every day, and my business is not creative writing. It's copywriting. It's business writing. So I end up writing every day. So I have a practice sort of because I promised other people that I will deliver things to them in writing. But I don't, I remember when I heard Cheryl Strayed talking about that she just has these sort of tidal waves of writing, and she just, you know, gets swept away in them for a period of months, and then, you know, there's a pause.
Yeah.
And that tends to be creatively, I've gone through many different phases and different life stages. And in this life stage, you know, in my 20s, I had all the time in the world to do whatever I wanted with my writing. So I do not have, I guess I feel like the way I live is kind of my poetry practice at this point. So it doesn't necessarily mean that I need to be writing things down, but I trust, to me, my intrinsic desire to write is so big that I don't have to make myself do certain things.
I noticed that. You are definitely like that. I'm not. I'm completely like, I'm the writer that writes in bursts, and then I'll, and it's dangerous. I'll start to go, oh my God, like, you know, my last book was Write Your True Story, and it was about unleashing your creativity and da-da-da. It's an ebook, but it was 60 pages, and I really wanted to get it succinct, and I wanted it to be short. I had a reason. It was amazing. I loved it. And then I was like, but then I noticed a month later, when I took like a month to like sort of just, all of a sudden all this space came in my life. It was difficult to get back in. And I think that honestly, making it a priority for people who need that extra push at like 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day is really nourishing. And I think that that's what we forget. Like, we know meditation is good for us. We know working out is good for us. But if we're truly feeling the call to write, not writing hurts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And many people who have a deep call to write and they put it away because they get older, life took over. They thought, oh, I'm not going to be a bestseller on the New York Times list, so I might as well not write. And actually, it has nothing to do with the New York Times. Can you speak to when you're not following through with a actual soul calling that you know you have, but you're not doing the writing?
I think this idea, in a way, for me, I don't know if this is, at least for a good 15 years, I had zero ambition about writing. I had to write. My ambition was to sit down and make things.
Yeah.
There was no audience, there was no listener, it was just the page and me. And I feel like that is something in this culture of reward and success and social media and, you know, look at what I've accomplished, that the relationship, what matters most in writing is keeping that relationship with the written word, that very sacred relationship that has nothing to do with anybody else.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with accomplishment or success or whether I'm good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
Just, I have something to say and I have to say it. And how am I going to structure my life so that I can sit down with myself and do that, make that a practice.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that is the part that, I mean, I've had lots of sort of writing students and coaching clients who believe they're writers, but they don't write.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of that, it's a way of cultivating oneself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's a very different goal than being good
Mm-hmm.
or accomplishing anything. It's like when I write, I want to recognize myself. I want to write something and say, yes, and this is my own personal agenda. Everyone has their own.
Yeah.
But I want to understand being human better by writing something down.
I mean, you're touching, it's very touching to hear, as it is, I think, a very spiritual practice. And I don't mean, I actually, I'm woo woo and I got all that stuff, but I mean like spiritual, like my blood pressure goes down, my relationships feel better, my body feels better, I feel more alive, I feel, and it's just in a notebook. Eventually I might get to it and revise it. Like that one, when I got a little burned out and I didn't even write in my journal anymore, I really started to go cuckoo. Like it didn't occur to me that I had taken it out on such a level. It was a great experiment because I didn't realize how bringing it back in was something that I needed. And when I talk to like painters, they literally, when they're not painting, they just feel stuck. Like there's a heavy stuck energy. And I feel like if you really, like the people who aren't writing and they say they are writers, they are writers. They're just so stuck. And if they detached from the outcome, right? That's what we got to do about everything, kind of. So I love what you said. And before we go, any inspiration that you would like to leave the audience, even a tip, like, I don't know if you have a favorite writing exercise or something that might stir us into going, okay, fine, I'm going to go open up my notebook today.
I'd say one of the things that I like to play with is kind of what are your power hours?
Oh, great. Yeah.
Because we tend to think about time like how much time do I have? But if I have an hour that's in my power hour zone, I can get like 5 times accomplished what I can get done in other.
Oh, that's great. Times. Oh, I love this.
So for me, there's this mixture of how can I show up at the page in that zone, but also how can I work with whatever I have?
Yeah.
Because a lot of us don't have the option of, being with our notebook or our laptop or whatever it is in our power hour or hours. So if what we have is 10 minutes, how can we make whatever it is as workable as possible? And to attend to, like to track it. I really am in the zone with poetry at 3 p.m. And I'm really in the zone with whatever it is, with writing at 4 a.m. And to sort of attend to like, what is my rhythm?
Yes. No, I love that. I love it. Like I work out after work, like always. I work out later in the day. It's the only way I can do it. I will not do it any other time unless it's after 3 o'clock. I don't know why. But with meditation, I like to do it in the morning. I really like it with my first cup of tea, sit down and meditate. If I don't do it then, I'm not going to do it for the rest of the day. So with writing, that's great. Like some people I know, they have a power hour at lunch. They actually really, truly feel like that's a nice spot for them. They feel accomplished. They've done some stuff. They got more to do, but now this is their time. Or in the evenings when like I had one writer, she did it after the kids went to bed. That was her favorite time to write. Thank you. You have also a great free gift for us.
I do. Do you want me to tell you about it?
Yes.
It is the workbook, the Fierce on the Page companion workbook that kind of pairs with my most recent book from Writer's Digest Books called Fierce on the Page. I think it's 36 pages, and it's exercises and invitations and prompts to kind of help people articulate who they are as writers right now and what they want and how they can kind of bring their best selves to, and their kind of align their best selves and their most powerful writing to create the writing life that they want.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much. That sounds awesome. I love it. And everyone, she's got great books. All of her books are great. Fierce on the Page is amazing. Make sure to go out and get it, and then you get the companion to go with it. So I'm so excited. Thank you so much for being here, Sage. It's always a pleasure.
It's such a delight to be with you. Thank you so much.
You have a great day, okay?
You too.
Okay, bye.
Bye.